Hi, it's Tony Veroven, and welcome to Talking Air Filtration and a NAFA webinar series. This is the webinar, What You Should Do About Air Filtration in Educational Facilities. Protect your students and staff. Our speaker today is Matthew Brooks, and if that's what you're looking for, you're in the right place here. Before we get started, I'm Tony. I'm on staff here at NAFA, and welcome you here. Thanks so much for joining us. NAFA is doing so many great things in air filtration and indoor air quality. We invite you to join us. We have a great community of air filtration professionals, distributors, manufacturers that all get together a couple times a year and also create a lot of educational and technical content. So if that sounds like a place you want to learn or contribute, this is the place to be. In fact, we just did a member survey, overwhelmingly positive, and collected a couple member testimonials that you can see here. And I think one of them is kind of says it all. Anyone that wants to compete in the industry needs to be part of NAFA. And if you want to compete, I'm assuming you do, we would love to have you. All right. So, and then coming up in October, we have an annual conference. We have an annual conference in usually late September and October. Here it's in October. And then usually in late March or early April, we will have our technical seminar. So the annual conference is going to be in Coeur d'Alene. On Monday, we will open registration. So if you're part of our mailing list, keep an eye out for that announcement, or keep an eye on our website as well. We also are always looking for great speakers and contributors, people to join and be part of our webinars or write articles, technical articles, or contribute in a lot of other ways. If you want to share your knowledge, you can go to our website and go to events and then go down to this open call for air filtration presentations or thought leadership. There's a form there that you can submit, and then one of our committees will review that. I wanted to feature a couple of guidelines. We have these best practices and guidelines for air filtration, and then we have several focuses on several different industries. So the two we're going to focus on today, kind of in context, is filtration for schools, K through 12 schools, and educational complexes. So you can go to our website and download those, and those are free. In fact, if you're in the air filtration profession and you have these sorts of folks as your customers, this is going to make you look really good. We know you're smart, but this is going to make you look smart to your clients because it's got the NAFA badge on it, the banner here. So feel free to download those and use those to have great conversations with your customers about air filtration in their facilities. Finally, if you're not already, please find us in these locations, a lot of the social media platforms, and you can find us here and keep up to date on those things. Okay, so we're going to go back over to Matt. Matt, I'm going to introduce you and let you share your screen. I'm going to stop sharing and let you take over here. Matt Brooks is going to be our main speaker today. And Matt, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself from there.
Well, thank you, Tony. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. This NAFA webinar is going to be all about air filtration in education facilities. And like Tony mentioned, NAFA is formed to provide education to its members and the general public. So I'm really honored to be here present and available to share a little bit of a passion that I have. And it's something that I believe is truly impactful now and in the future. I am a certified air filtration specialist with NAFA. I serve on the education committee and the technical committee. I've been in the filtration world for over a decade now, which is a little scary to say. But as a filter guy, I hear myself called that a lot. My goal is always to find the most effective solution for each application. And I genuinely enjoy seeing and learning about new processes where different types of facilities are using different types of filters. And an education facility is certainly one of those. And it's really helped me kind of help other people discover new solutions and unique ways to solve some of these problems. So before I really dive into this, and I think the best way to start us off is sharing a little bit of my personal indoor air quality passion and why I was so interested in the filtration world when I got into it in 2010. When I started in 2010, my whole interest began right after indoor or water quality became a very big issue. And I really concentrated on air quality and the effects it had on people, especially young kids. in that 2015, 2016 issue in Flint City, Michigan, kind of sparked that with me. I just so happened to be getting ready to become a father at the time, my first of three. And knowing my personal history with respiratory issues and illnesses as a child, I went on a bit of a mission to educate as many people as I could about the importance of air quality and how, especially in school districts, how much of an impact it can have. And what seems to be the most eye-opening when I start talking to people about how important it really is when you look at the amount of food the average person eats in a day, and that it's regulated by the FDA and so many other agencies. And you look at the water quality that's governed by the EPA and the CDC, the amount of air we breathe every day and the lack of standards or recognition for it is really concerning. And until recently, there wasn't much general awareness outside of the indoor air quality community and healthcare. So this is something that I wanted to help out with. Okay, so you've all joined me today about filtration, specifically in education facilities. And my guess is you care enough to spend this time here with me because you know that these facilities are a critical part of our communities, and they are the environments that students and staff help shape our future. So what I'm going to dive into is the who, the what, the when, the where, and the how, with the whole purpose of uncovering how you should improve and change your air filtration for your specific education facility. And unfortunately, there's no one size fits all magic bullet solution. But luckily, we've all been learning enough and continue learning more every day about different filter applications and technologies and their fit, form, and function with different systems. And being able to help a lot of people through this COVID learning curve and hopefully beyond that, what we've been able to see is that people are starting to care more and more, and that the industry awareness has really risen, that the impact of filtration now isn't just something that came from the pandemic. It's really encouraging to see. And when you start really diving into it and realize the average person spends 90% of their lives indoors, yet before COVID, most people didn't really think about that. You have a much greater understanding of what we're trying to do here. And with limited resources, you can understand schools are having a hard time, and just plain and simple, the air quality in these education facilities is just not as good as it could be. But the good news is that there's a few simple things you could do to really improve that. So getting into it, why is air quality such a critical part of education facilities? The awareness and importance has been trending upwards for years, but the pandemic really gave that indoor air quality community the spotlight to help across the globe. And I do think a lot of people did a really great job and stepped up and made some impactful change. And a lot of these people are involved with expert organizations like ASHRAE, which is the American Society for Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers. They are involved with the CDC and the EPA and World Health Organizations and many other agencies that have provided guidance highlighting indoor air quality in the mitigation of COVID. What it's turning into now is awareness across the board for indoor air quality. And you can see this quote here from an expert: poor indoor air quality, specifically fine particulate matter, remember that, has an effect on cognitive function and health. Now, talking about education facilities, that sounds like something we'd be pretty concerned about when we're trying to learn and teach, doesn't it? With the spotlight on indoor quality, the majority of people, they really do understand the correlation between the health and the air that we breathe. So how does that air get so bad? The geographical location absolutely plays a part in it. The climate, whether it's in an urban or rural setting, neither one really being better than the other. Just the general outdoor air and the surroundings are definitely an issue. The buildings themselves are one of the biggest issues. And the problem we're focusing on, that we're really going to narrow in on, that filtration can effectively and efficiently impact or control, are particles in the form of pollution. And there's going to be kind of two ways to look at this. There's non-viable particles like dirt and dust in the air, and viable particles, which are microorganisms, bacteria, and viruses. There's also VOCs, volatile organic compounds, and they're definitely a concern, but they're usually source controlled by eliminating the cause, whether that's cleaning chemical, an air freshener, construction, debris, furniture, like inexpensive furniture that might emit formaldehyde. And those can be controlled or contained with molecular filtration, but normally those are source control. And without trying to turn this into a microbiology, indoor air quality lesson, let's kind of just stick to that overarching umbrella of particles. And what we can take from this is that until recently, average person used to think that the cold or a flu, being a virus, was passed person to person on objects like handrails and desks and doors and books within the school facility, which is very true. But what people are now becoming more universally aware of outside of the healthcare and indoor air quality world is that viruses can also be passed on by riding, or these viruses will catch a ride on particles in the air. And this is absolutely an oversimplification just for the sake of time. But the point being is the issue we're going to be talking about is air pollution particles, and air pollution particles are definitely an issue. So before we dive into the filters, which will be the most fun, I promise that, we need to understand what we're going to be trying to filter out of the air. And thanks to AAF Flanders for this awesome visual here. Filters are designed to remove very small pollutants or particles out of the air. And these particles are measured in microns. And 1 micron is 1,000th of a millimeter, which, if we're going to Americanize it, is 1/25,400th of an inch. So to try to put this all in perspective, the diameter, the tip of an average human hair, the tip of it is about 100 microns in diameter. And the smallest, depending on your eyesight, the unaided human eye can see is about 50 microns. So when we're talking about hazards to our health, like this fine particulate matter and the viruses, we're talking about 10, 25, and 1 micron diameter particles. And to give you a little bit of a visual, if, as an example, the 10 micron particle was the size of a basketball, a 2.5 would be relatively close to a tennis ball, and a 1 micron would be essentially a golf ball. And we're looking at this as a human hair being 10 basketballs wide, and we're concerned about 1 golf ball in that scenario. Now, I understand that's a little kind of hard to grasp, but we're talking about stuff that you can't see is what it comes down to. And our bodies do have some natural filters when it comes to the large particles. And when you look at the 2.5 and the 1 is when you want to start being a little bit more concerned. And we all know air pollution is bad for our health, but the lesser known part about that is that the really small particles are the ones we want to really pay attention to. Those particulate matter, 1 micron is really dangerous to human health. You can see here, the human body has no natural protection against it. They can get right into your bloodstream, essentially. And if you don't have proper filtration to take that out of the air you're breathing, your lungs become that filter. And that should be especially concerning in education facilities because of the diverse population and the high occupancy. Now, bringing all this information right back into education facilities is pretty simple. You can see here this quote from a Berkeley Lab study, seeing and realizing what we're talking about. The average high school student, average graduation age student in America will spend about 15,000 hours in school, which means their health is directly tied to the health of their learning environments. And unfortunately, as you can see, for the majority, most of that time spent in our education facilities, the indoor air quality is a problem. Luckily, improving the indoor air quality with better filtration is real simple and something we can all start doing tomorrow. Just to add on to that, there's another really good study that came pre-COVID from the National Center of Education study on indoor air quality, talking about gaseous vapors and particles like what I'm trying to focus you in on here, and not controlling school indoor air quality, basically showing that there's increased long-term health issues, system reliability issues, and there's a lot of other studies that will back this up. And there is indoor air quality strategies that you can implement, and there's a layer of them that include filtration being a big part of it. But the other one that I will talk about a little bit is ventilation, which is absolutely a big part. But ensuring that ventilation you're getting as fresh air or outdoor air is quality, meaning that it's clean and clear of particulates. And the only way to do that is with a filter. So why do you need the filters? Obviously, just to protect all that expensive HVAC equipment and something for your maintenance guys to do, right? Well, looking at the whole picture and understanding what you're trying to filter out is definitely important. And what you're protecting is your HVAC equipment, and it's maintaining your temperature for heat transfer and protecting your blower for airflows and making sure you're not spreading all that nasty stuff all around, and keeping your ducts clean. This is one of my favorite ones. When you see a movie with people crawling around the ductwork, it's way off. Ductwork's not really well lit, and it's not a shiny place for like a really awesome movie scene. It's usually pretty dirty unless you have good maintenance on it. But outside of protecting your equipment and your systems, it's also there to protect people. And like I mentioned, the quality of the air that we breathe is really, really, really coming to light through this pandemic. And I used to use this picture back in 2015, 2016 for my presentations with education facilities. And I would always say something along the lines of, I don't want to see the day my children have to go to school looking like this. And I don't know if it's putting my foot in my mouth or what, but it's really taken on a whole new meaning here. And what it comes down to is that filter is not just there to cover a gap and fill a hole. It's specifically engineered. It's designed to perform a customized job within your system. And talking about the specific engineering, there's a lot of science and engineering and technology that goes into that little filter, that often overlooked thing in there. What you're seeing here now is the ASHRAE efficiency standard, which is the MERV chart. And I'm sure you've heard of MERV now. MERV stands for minimum efficiency reporting value, meaning that filter is tested to at least be as efficient as these minimum standards on the particle sizes that they're tested at. The MERV rating system here shows on a scale of 1 to 16, 16 being the most efficient on the smallest stuff. 1 really is more of a window screen. Now, what you'll see is not here is a HEPA filter, because that is a different test. It's a different standard. Without going too far into the MERV rating, if you want to get some really good technical information on it, NAFA has a resource, the user's guide to understanding MERV. You can dive into that. I believe it's a free download right on the NAFA website. But why you do know NERV is because of these two guys here. You used to use a MERV 8, and now everyone's saying you have to upgrade to a MERV 13. And the reason everyone wants the CDC and ASHRAE recommend that MERV 13 is because it removes 85% or more of that 1 to 3 micron particle level. And that's really was the concern as the carrier for a virus. But also, as you saw 2 slides ago, it has a real impact on your health as well. So getting into the actual filters themselves, these are the ones that you've been seeing if you've been in the education world on the maintenance or operations side for longer than I've been around. These panel filters are basically media filters that have the same square face and media area, meaning if it's a 24-inch tall and a 24-inch wide filter, 2 foot by 2 foot, it'll have 4 square feet of media. These can come in fiberglass or polyester, and that's pretty standard. With a cardboard frame, the polyester can also come with a metal frame in the middle, and they're used in different applications, usually not as a standalone filter. These are some of the original filters when you look at the fiberglass that have been around for a very, very, very long time. What you'll also see is some of these metal washable type filters that are used in more specialty applications or something that's going to be more outward facing, meaning it's going to see some weather. The next step up, which you'll hear more and more about as we go, are called pleated filters. And these are so popular because they have a large media area in that same area, in that same frame. So that 24-inch by 24-inch or that 2 foot by 2 foot, same thing, size frame that holds 4 square feet for the panel filter. A pleated filter can hold up to in the range of 8 or 12 or 18 or more, because you're actually folding, which is pleating, that media into that frame. This also allows it to have higher dust loading capacity. There's more areas for that dirt to get trapped, those particles to get caught in the media. It allows for lower pressure drop because you have more doors for that air to flow through, which in turn lets you leave those filters in for a longer time. So you're actually going to be changing these less often. They offer some real good energy efficiency advantages and reduced maintenance costs. And this is where you're going to see a lot of the new technology go into, because they're able to use the higher efficiency medias and engineer it into these frames to be able to use in multiple applications. Now, what a lot of people ask about, and this is where you get a lot of confusion, is when you get into box or bag or pocket filters. These come in just such a big variety of types and sizes, and they range from a 4-inch to a 6-inch to a 12-inch. And then when you get into the bags, they can go even longer if you have the space to install those filters. And they're really great when you can pick the right one for the right application to get the right result. They come in all sorts of different media types and sizes and efficiencies, and they'll always have a higher dust loading capacity and a lower pressure drop if selected correctly, and be able to last a lot longer. Usually these boxes and bags will last at least a year. Sometimes they get changed out prior to that because of their environment that they're in. But whenever possible, these are a much better option. Even though they do have a higher upfront cost, they give you a much better value for what you're paying for. And then to dive into HEPA filters. Now, HEPA filter is something you've heard a lot in the news, and I'm in New York. I hear it all the time. I've heard it from the beginning of this pandemic. HEPA stands for high efficiency particulate air filter, and it's a 99.97% effective or better on a 0.3 micron. And it's tested to that 0.3 micron particle size because it's considered the most penetrating particle size, or MPPS. And this doesn't mean that it can only capture 0.3 or that it can't capture anything smaller. And what I've heard a lot personally in the past 2 years is that a HEPA filter is designed to filter out particles down to 0.3, and that's it. And the COVID virus is 0.1, so it won't work. And that's absolutely incorrect. And that's a turn and run scenario, and maybe ask them to check their facts there. HEPA filters come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and they come in different applications. And they really are fantastic when used and applied correctly. And going towards the people that might not completely understand this, I borrowed this slide directly from ASHRAE. If you want to dig more into their studies on it, you can go to ashray.com and go down into their technical resources of filtration and disinfection. There's some information provided from NAFA there actually as well, with the Wells-Riley report referenced. But this simply illustrates and very nicely illustrates the point I'm highlighting. The principle of filtration called Brownian motion, which is the main capture principle for very small 1 micron and under particulate, is highlighted here. You can see on the graph on the right where the HEPA detail is viewed. The 0.3 is considered the most penetrating particle size. And in this scenario, there's actually a 0.2 that would technically be the most penetrating particle size. But for test reasoning, the 0.3 has been a universal accepted way to measure it. And you're seeing that there's a drop here. But if you look over a little bit to the left, you can see that it's dropped to 99.94% efficiency, meaning that the drop in efficiency at that 0.2 is minimal. What you should notice and take back with you is that the efficiency actually goes back up above that 0.97 in this scenario with that 0.1 micron. Because of the laws, this is the way universally HEPA filters will work, and you do not need you don't need anybody telling you otherwise. We'll put it that way. And to be clear, that 1 micron is not going to fly through any certified HEPA filter. Another point just to make, that all filters do remove all size ranges, just at different efficiencies. So the percentage that they'll capture, a MERV 13 filter will capture that 0.1, just not at an efficiency like a HEPA filter will. A window screen is going to capture a 0.10 once in a while too, just not as efficient as a MERV 13 or a MERV 8. And when it comes specifically to COVID, the biggest problem with HEPA filters capturing COVID particles doesn't have anything to do with the size. It has to do with the fact if the particle itself, the virus, the particle it's riding on, makes it to the HEPA filter. And this is why the ventilation is so important, especially when we're looking at indoor air quality filtration. Those air changes an hour, the ACH, have a big impact. If you're shooting for 6 air changes, which is pretty universally accepted with a lot of these agencies and recommendations that are out there, that means that room is changing that air every 10 minutes. I won't dive any deeper into it. Just the rule of thumb is just always fact check and get third-party testing and rely on governing bodies like ASHRAE that all the other experts rely on and they go to for their resources. So the last thing I'm going to touch on when it comes to actual products themselves or tools you can use are portable and supplementary air cleaning technologies. And according to ASHRAE and their position document on infectious aerosols, When appropriately selected and deployed, so I'm going to say that again, when appropriately selected and deployed, single space high efficiency filtration units can be highly effective in reducing concentrations of infectious aerosols in the space. Essentially, they add clean air changes to that space. Whether the ventilation system can do it or not, this is where these really come into use. They come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and different types of airflows and different combinations of filters, which will adjust its effectiveness. So that's why you really want to make sure it's appropriately selected. The advantages of these is they're really quick, they're really easy, they're portable, there's minimal maintenance. They can sometimes add in other technologies like molecular or UV. The downside is that you do have to deploy them appropriately. So they have to be used correctly. They do get noisy if you don't select the right one. Applying them sometimes can be difficult, and the efficiencies aren't always as advertised. And one little caveat note that I'll add to this while you're looking for these, look into the proprietary maintenance parts, especially replacement filters. If you can find units that have a more generic filter, it'll help you in the long run. When it comes to supplementary technologies, I'm only going to speak to the one that ASHRAE and CDC recommend, and that's UV, and the ability to UV to inactivate microorganisms. Basically, its effectiveness relies on dosage, which is time and intensity, and the susceptibility of the microorganism itself, meaning if it's a more robust microorganism like a mold, it's going to take a little bit more dose, meaning more time and more energy to inactivate that. But the effectiveness and the safety of UV is well known. Many studies out there. It also helps with keeping equipment clean, and it is recommended by ASHRAE and the CDC. I can't speak to a lot of the other emerging technologies, but I can say that you'll always want to get that third-party verification and do your research on it and try to get expert opinions on it. There's a big group in ASHRAE that help you out with that and puts out information as available once the studies are done. But I do like to say that it is great to see the private sector pouring resources and time into trying to develop new technologies to help achieve better indoor air quality. And you can see that indoor air quality evolution is not something that's going away with all the investment going into it. So that is a bonus. The next thing I want to talk about is just the progressive awareness. The paradigm shift of the indoor air quality. It's really catapulted with the pandemic, and that's been the silver lining for all this, is that the world is adapting quickly outside of the infection control world, which is obviously a big one by itself. But there's been a real paradigm shift in the indoor air quality, the indoor environmental quality, the whole healthy buildings movement, and all the great strides that LEED and WELL and FitWell and the Green Building Council have made are absolutely fantastic. And what's really cool to see is that there's been this incredible push from outside the filtration world to raise awareness on the importance of air quality and the role that filtration plays in it. And what you're going to see and what you've been seeing is that things are shifting from comfort or occupant comfort, like just the system's only there for temperature and humidity control, and it's adding in life safety and indoor air quality and the sense of infection control. And then you're seeing the cost, the initial commoditization costs, and trying to save a couple pennies here and there by sacrificing efficiency of or selecting the less efficient or less effective filter, and going more towards a total cost of engineered solution and getting a better indoor air quality with that indoor air quality being part of the cost. The last is the one that you've probably seen the most in the facility side or the contracting world and the engineering world, is just the existing maintenance seems to be a little bit of a bother and time consuming, or used to be an ignored job. Now it's shifted to more of a focus, and it's an expected or needed and regulated performance valued job. And that's really, really, really encouraging to see. And now with this COVID spotlight, people know what the problems are, and they're doing the right thing as long as they're not stuck in their old habits. They're trying to upgrade to that MERV 13. They're adding in portable HEPA filters. They're looking into other technologies like UV to increase their indoor air quality. And really what you should be thinking as we're going through this is your current situation and the process and the systems you have and what you can be doing. And the reason that education facilities is a topic all on its own is because it's such a unique place. And really what I do everywhere, but what you need to do, especially with education facilities, is look at each piece of equipment and look and say, what's the goal for this piece of equipment? Is a univentilator just to control this room, or is it something in the gymnasium or the auditorium? What's the application that this equipment's going into? These facilities come in all shapes and sizes and styles and ages. And in general, the majority of these facilities, they use multiple types of equipment and multiple ages and ranges of equipment. And facilities like school facilities have such a diverse list. And most of them have, as an example, outside of classrooms, they'll have a kitchen or a cafeteria or a dining area. And the filtration solution used in the dining area for that general population is going to be dramatically different than what you want to use in the actual food prep area with source control filtration. Same thing in a wood shop. If you have a wood shop in your school or some other sort of electrical shop, there's also things you want to take into consideration with a pool or an admin's office, a gym, an auditorium, a nurse's office, or just a general ventilation issue with your air being pulled in from the bus loop. That's a problem you see a lot. And just making these small incremental upgrades can be very impactful and add up very quickly. And they can really increase and improve with minimal cost and effort. So just looking at your basic classroom filter, going from a disposable panel to a MERV 8 pleat was really the trend 3+ years ago. And now going from that MERV 8 pleat to a MERV 13 pleat is what's recommended. And the issue with a lot of places is going to be that, they're not really sure if they can and how they can. So to understand how you can, or if you can, find out what the best filter is for you, you have to understand that there's simple and immediate things you can do, like that 8 to 13, or adding additional filters or racks or equipment. And then there's stuff down the road that you can do with capital projects or something over the summer, even if it's not in your current calendar. And the old saying, you get what you pay for. When you're in the contract or purchasing side of the world, they really do give you what you ask. If you specify for something cheap, you're going to get something cheap. And that's uncomfortably true. And trying to just overcome that mentality of we've been using these for years is especially painful in a lot of education facilities that don't want to make that change unless they're forced to. So what we try to do is take a better look and see what the total life cycle cost for what you're currently using is. And there are many other costs that go into the filter selection, but the total life cycle cost is just taking away from the initial cost or the purchase price, which is usually just this consideration of the actual cost of the filter plus the shipping. And usually the average transaction, we'll say, stops there. But you're missing a lot of parts to that equation. And when you look at it, there's a couple other things you need to really understand before you just swipe that card. The first and foremost is that initial cost, which is the cost of the filter and getting it to your door. But then you have to understand the whole purchasing process cost for the admin side and the receiving it and the labor for installing it and replacing a filter that maybe you have to change out every month instead of every quarter or every 6 months. The disposal of those filters, and not to mention the office work to process and close out each filter change. The next cost you really want to tie in, which is getting more and more attention with the green building movement, is the energy consumption from the blower having to work harder and the heat transfer and the equipment being cleaner. These are all dramatically affected by the last one. And what I'm going to say is the most important part of the equation. And that's the performance. And that means the quality of the filter itself, of its efficiency, and the average pressure drop, which is impacted by the amount of media and the dust loading capacity, meaning if it can hold more dust, it'll essentially have a longer service life because it can stay in there longer, meaning you'll change it out less often, meaning you'll have lower pressure drops, meaning you'll use less energy. Less disposal, less life cycle costs across the board. So the best filter selection is really looking at it fit, form, and function wise, is being specific to each piece of equipment in each application. And once you implement this properly, you'll see an ROI with your maintenance resources and energy and just better indoor air quality. The ROI with proactive maintenance is pretty clear and well studied. But with proper maintenance and the help of the total cycle cost filter analysis, you can quickly improve your indoor air quality and actually have it pay for itself without doing too much digging. not only in the operating budget, but in higher average daily attendance because of the healthier environment. There's a pretty cool study out there called Determining the Economic Value of Preventative Maintenance. There's a lot of these different studies. This happens to be one that I've used a couple of times, and it just shows the return on investment is there. But how do you optimize your filter maintenance and to make sure that you're taking full advantage of it? There's two ways to look at this. Usually there's two ways that facilities maintain their filtration systems, HVAC systems in general. One is on a schedule, maintenance calendar time, and you see that a lot in schools for winter break and summer break. That's usually when the maintenance gets done. But what a lot of newer facilities are doing are, and actually collecting the benefits for that, are based on pressure drop of the equipment, which is a performance-based changeout. And when you use time, it is easy to schedule. It's convenient to do. It's consistent. Every year you're changing out your filters during this break. But you usually end up using more filters. You have a higher disposal cost, a higher labor cost. If there's an event where indoor air quality norms might change, like construction or high occupancy event, a sporting event, something like that, an accident, those filters that get compromised stay in the system till it's time to change them, which results in reduced performance, reduced efficiency, and sometimes safety issues. When you change on performance, they tend to be quicker changes because you don't have to change wholesale the whole facility. You tend to change a couple units at a time. Doing this, you actually get the max life, the most value from the filters that you're selecting. And you're letting the filter do its job as long as possible, which in turn lets you use less filters. You have lower changeouts. When you add in filter monitoring, you actually get some additional performances in it as well. Usually one solution in one schedule doesn't meet all your needs, and I understand that. I recommend performance-based changeouts whenever possible, which is actually a surprise to a lot of people because it usually means you're buying less filters annually. But I think the majority of situations, the performance is the most effective way to achieve your optimized performance for your filter, and the most effective way to get that impactful change for the well-being of the environment for the staff and students. One thing to touch on is a couple considerations. Now, what you can do is you can look at some issues with your current system. Immediately, you can go look at your filter racks, make sure there's not little small gaps. Every 1 millimeter gap has a potential to drop that filter you're putting in there a whole MERV rating. You want to make sure that they're sealed up nicely, that the designed filter rack is still functional, and that you're using any spacers and gaskers that are appropriately initially used in there. Now, you also want to look to try to upgrade the filters in each unit as best as you can according to that cost analysis. The total cost analysis was really going to be your guide here. On top of that, on top of the engineering and contractors balancing your system, there's programs out there from the UL that offer ventilation and filtration verification that you can take advantage of to make sure your units are operating as originally intended. And confirming your equipment is supplying that 6 air changes. That's your target goal that's endorsed by a lot of places to make sure you're getting the proper ventilation. If not, you can look at adding in portable HEPA filter units or other pieces of equipment. And that's more of a future thing when you look at adding in portable units. It's something you could do now. The lead times have significantly come down. Adding in filter monitoring capabilities, just looking at that. There's the district that my kids go to, the facility manager there, he put in pressure switches in all the univents because they weren't tied into his his building management system. And he didn't put them into every single univent. He put 2 in on one side of the wing, and he put 1 in the other side of the wing, and he just was strategic about where he was putting him. And switching from an 8 to a 13, we weren't sure on how that filter changeout was going to go, whether it was going to be a 3-month, a 4-month, a 6-month. So what we found out is that the units that are facing the parking lot need to be changed out a little bit quicker, as opposed to the units that are inside more protected within the facility itself. So adding a pressure switch is something really simple to do. Even if you don't have a building management system, you could set it up with a light or some other notification. Just don't use red and green, use a blue light or something like that so you don't freak people out. Adding in UV is an option. Adding in new filter housings is surprisingly cost effective when you're considering outside of capital budgets. And on the engineering and design side, looking long term in the future, you really want to try to design for worst case scenario, which most guys and girls and women and men, I guess, do really a good job of it, especially now. When it comes to the filter track itself, you want to try to leave room for a 4-inch track, or leave at least room on a 1-inch track to put in a 4-inch, a 6-inch, or a 12-inch filter. So you have all your options available there. Maybe design in some UVC and design around standard size filters. You can design around a standard filter and significantly cut your filter budget right then and there, because custom filters are very expensive and they take a very long time when compared to standards. Now, NAFA has certified air filtration specialists that can definitely help you identify the best solution for each application. And the best part about all these changes is that there is funding available. And this is coming from recommendations, based off of recommendations from the World Health Organization and the EPA, ASHRAE, the CDC. The federal government has issued just billions in funding to public and private schools to help support with upgrades for filtration and air cleaners and new HVAC systems, which in turn will help you convert to that total life cycle cost and long term give you better indoor air quality, which is going to be better for the future. There's a lot more information on this on ASHRAE and on the NAFA website. There'll be some more information as well once this goes up, but there's a lot of funding out there. So if the issue is a budget constraint, you just have to try to contact your local, your state, and then go federal from there. There's a lot of money to be there to take advantage of. Don't miss out. So looking into the future, the Internet of Things is really something that's starting to catch some serious steam with everything going on. Being able to show the air filter performance, automatically tracking pressure drop and particulate levels, and becoming really part of that standard building management system is already started, and I believe it'll be the norm sooner than later. This is also going to allow occupants to see air quality of the building they're entering and know that it's a clean, safe, healthy environment. If the building has the capability to do so, this is something that you're seeing in some higher end or more critical environments already. A lot of filtration manufacturers are moving towards sustainability. That's something that has been kind of pushed with going green and decarbonization, and new building standards with LEED and Fitwel and WELL and the U.S. Green Building Council are promoting and pushing higher efficiency filters for better indoor air quality. That's a couple things you're going to see in the next near future. One of the things that a little Matt Brooks prediction for you, that the EPA Air Quality Index is going to become a little bit more normalized, and that air quality will become as common as the temperature. Now, that's not going to happen tomorrow, but if you look at your phone and you pull up the weather map, you're going to there's a very likely chance that you're going to have some sort of reference to the AQI. And the EPA put this at airnow.gov. It's basically an air quality to measure from 0 to 500, 500 being the most dangerous, and telling you how clean or safe that air is outside. And as we know, air quality can affect our daily lives, and it can change like the weather. And that's why, again, I mentioned with ventilation, bringing fresh air from the outside isn't always a cure-all. Making sure that air is filtered appropriately is very important. The AQI is great, and I do believe it'll start becoming more normalized in the very near future. So now the fun part, to take some action. So if you're a facility operator, you have a whole list of stuff to do. I understand that. Really just hammering home the upgrading to the highest compatible filter you can use, usually a MERV 13 pleat. You're able to use that. And consider portable air cleaners from a reputable company with some third-party testing. When you want to consider ultraviolet light, just make sure you're talking to someone that does this professionally and that can give you some background information and size it appropriately, because it does work when deployed correctly. When you're looking at other technologies, just make sure you do your homework and get third-party testing on it. Parents and students, participate in your indoor air quality school committee. If your school doesn't have an indoor air quality school committee, start one. Teachers and staff, you can join that too, but also keep ventilation units in your classroom, free and clear. So that means like the univent that's in the corner, make sure that it can work properly and the filter can do its job and ventilate the room safely and cleanly for you. Familiarize yourself with indoor air quality issues and nicely report them when they do come up, if they do come up. University and district personnel and leaders, this is something that you guys can have the most impact on, and that's supporting and really promoting a campus-wide indoor air quality management program. You can implement policies and plans, and there's a lot of case studies out there that other campuses, K through 12 and universities, have implemented sustainable indoor air quality programs that you can kind of copy off of. So to wrap this up, I'll leave you with just one of the best quotes I've seen from a school administrator so far this year. Really what it comes down to is, as an administrator, he knows that he's there to help the students, and the students need the help from the teachers, and where these resources need to go are in the classroom. And this is Richard Middleton, superintendent of schools. If you're on here, thanks, Richard. Great quote. So thank you all for spending some time with me. I appreciate you letting me talk in your ear for a little while here. Hopefully you have a better understanding and a little bit more of a passion. And we all and understand that we all should be striving for something better, better than just merely the minimal acceptable standard, and that the investments now can lead to long-term lasting improvements, and something as simple as increasing your filtration efficiency can reduce that particulate pollution in the air. And that will help everyone in the building, cognitive function and health-wise. And as an old mentor used to always say to me when I got into business, that he's no longer in, when it comes down to it, just do it for the kids. So special thanks to AAF, Flanders, and Permatron and Smith Filters for all the backup information in the images here.
Fantastic work, Matt. Wow. I think you're going to talk yourself into more speaking on behalf of NAFA for sure. So you're going to hear from us. Thank you so much. That was great. I think very great for all levels. Just a couple of housekeeping things I wanted to kind of cover here is we are recording this session. If you are any of those folks that Matt mentioned, like the people that we wanted to really have see this, right? Whether in the air filtration industry as a professional, as a manufacturer, distributor, or if you are a facility manager or responsible for these facilities, please share this recording. We will put it on our website. Everybody will get a link to where this is. The slides will be available. I think this is a great first step in helping educate the public on the importance of air filtration, really in all facilities. I'm sure that schools are not the only ones with challenging, aging technology infrastructure, right? I'm sure we plan to, and we'll probably do other ones in other facilities like hospitals and government buildings and so on and so forth. So I'm sure they have a lot of the same issues. So Matt, we've got quite a few questions. And so you probably are looking at the Q&A section. There's a lot of them there. I've pulled a couple here. So if you don't mind, maybe we can take the last the 10 minutes or so and just kind of run through as many as we can. And then I think we were talking before that maybe any unanswered questions, maybe we can address those maybe in an article or something like that afterwards. Does that sound fair?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. All right. So here's the first one. What is the optimal level for PM 2.5? As low as possible doesn't help.
Well, that's a fantastic question. Unfortunately, as low as possible is the answer. But according to like the EPA with that AQI, they actually have the PM 2.5 categorized. So from according to and it's based on the Clean Air Act. And I believe it was last updated in 2012. But they've essentially brought it up to 12 micrograms per cubic meter, meaning anything above that is moderately unhealthy. Anything above 50 is very unhealthy. And if you get higher than that, it's hazardous. So you can dive more into that if you want with EPA's airnow.gov and their AQI. You're muted.
Good catch. I was planning on unchecking that and then I got sidetracked. All right, here we go. Okay, so were schools already focused on IAQ and filtration prior to COVID, or is this a new trend?
Well, I'd like to say you tell me if there's any school people out there, but from what I've seen, and I would say across the industry, this is absolutely a new trend. Schools and education facilities in general struggle with the same infrastructure and resources that they're struggling with now. Just now they're amplified and the spotlight's on them. Before there was a little bit of a lack of awareness and a lack of knowledge, But now the effort's there and the focus is there. And actually, at least in the US, the government's stepping up to try to help implement and subsidize some changes. So it is definitely a newer trend. So I'll say that.
Awesome. And please tell us. I did put a little note in the chat. So maybe it varies by region or state or municipality or country. But tell us, put your comments in there. Is this a new trend, or were you already working on this prior to 2020? Here's another one. How does addressing air filtration in educational facilities impact their budget?
So another great question. This is really the main concern for most facility operators and administrators. It's absolutely going to impact your budget. The question is how. So with subsidized funding, it's not going to hit your budget as hard now. The changes will affect you later, but what those changes are implementing indoor air quality strategies. The biggest complaint I see with the budget is going to be changing to a MERV 13 filter, and that their system can't handle it. But even if if that really were the case and you shifted to a MERV 11 or a MERV 9, that's still going to make an impact. But for most scenarios, in most cases, most equipment, no matter the age, these pieces of equipment are using MERV 8 filters. An average MERV 8 filter might start at a 0.2 or a 0.3 water column pressure drop. Now, that doesn't mean a lot. If it's changed out at 1, it doesn't really matter. But as that MERV 8 filter loads up, it's going to bring its pressure drop up to a 0.5 or higher. Now, if you're leaving the filter in there for 6 months, or you're leaving it in there till performance, it's going to be very close to 1 inch. So going to a MERV 13 starting at a 0.3 or 0.4, even if that were the case, you might just end up having to pay for an extra set of filters. It's absolutely going to impact your budget, but if you're doing it properly and you look at that total life cycle cost, you'll actually get some return on investment if you're basing things off on performance.
With limitations on budgets as well as the age of HVAC systems in schools, what would you recommend as an alternative to MERV 13?
So a MERV 11 is going to be a good option. Really, the MERV 9, there's a couple really good MERV 9 filters out there. They are more expensive, but they are very robust. They will last as long as your MERV 8. They'll hold a little bit more dirt and dust. If you're really dead set on that MERV 8, hopefully you're using a high capacity MERV 8. There's not much of a cost there. Difference between a standard and high capacity, but you're getting 20 to 30% more filtering media. The other things you can look at are those portable air handlers or portable air filters, or implementing UV. Also trying to run that filtration equipment even when they're not occupied, just to make sure that room is flush. So there's just a couple little caveats that you can try to look into.
Well, you just touched on the portable filter. So there's a question here. Are portable HEPA filters effective?
Great question. A very hot topic. So short answer is yes, they are. There's a lot of studies out there. ASHRAE endorsed. There's a Dr. Shelley Miller out of Colorado that's done some extensive research with portable air filters and how effective they are on actual COVID, let alone air quality. So really what it comes down to is a portable air cleaner is using a mechanical filter. A mechanical filter is always going to be good because you're supplying more air changes. If your facility has an older infrastructure and you can't get to that really target range of 6 air changes, and you put a portable unit in there that can give you an extra 2, well, now you're in a much better environment with minimal cost, no capital infrastructure issues there. But the effectiveness of these units is always going to be in question. And that's why you want to work with someone that has some third-party verification and knows how to deploy these effectively.
Fantastic. All right, here's one that I think is also in my very limited knowledge as a layperson in air filtration, but I think even I know the answer to this. So I'm going to cue this one up for you, Matt, because I think it's often misconstrued or misunderstood, this concept. All right, so you mentioned that the microns between 1 and 3 are known to be carriers, but can you tell me how MERV filters actually address the typical virus in its nuclei state at 0.125 microns in size?
So to dive into the microbiology of all this, no, the simple answer is that the droplet nuclei are essentially a particle in the air. It's an aerosolized particle, and that particle is going to act just like any other particle in the air. The virus itself is attached to either a dust particle or that droplet nuclei, which will then get entrained into the HVAC system and captured by the filter. What the MERV can't affect is if that virus that's riding on something, or if it's the virus itself, which wouldn't sustain very long, it would die very quickly, doesn't make it to the filter. So the difference between the 1 and 3, those are really the 1 to 5 is what's been identified as the best carriers. And that 1 and under, it really is where you get into the viruses themselves. So MERV filters, like the MERV 13, is going to be 85% effective, meaning every time that air is pushed through that filter, it's going to eliminate 85% of that size particles or more. And on the submicron or the 1, the MERV 13 happens to be 50%. So every time you're taking 50% off in a log reduction. Hopefully that is.
So air exchanges are super important, and viruses don't live out in the open other than attached, right? Yeah. Is that those are the two main things? Those are the two things I know. Those are the two things I know about air filtration.
You nailed it.
All right. Here's one. And this maybe just kind of like we'll put a nice bow. We're just got like 2 minutes out here. So maybe put a nice bow on this one. What can we do? This is air filtration professional asking this. What can we do to impress upon districts the incredible importance of IAQ, indoor air quality?
Share this presentation to them. Really what you want to do is approach them in the manner of doing the right thing. And what I've found most successful is educating the educators. Now, I'm not going to be able to design the whole system for them, but what I can tell them is the difference between what they're currently using and what they can be using, and the issues with both. Now, if you're laying them all out, the sensible answers will come out with most facilities. Now, unfortunately, there's some places that you're going to have a very hard time getting through, but in my experience, bringing all the information to the table lets them make the right decision. And usually it's leaning more towards better filtration.
That's fantastic, Matt. I think that's all the time we have here. So thank you so much for your contributions. The everyman kind of way of presenting, so that we can all understand what this technical stuff really means. Again, we will share the PDF. It's actually, in fact, it's already out there. I did share that in the Q&A. You will receive a copy of this presentation. We'll put it up on our YouTube channel. We'll post the embedded on our website, so you'll be able to get it there. And as Matt said, you'll be able to share it with people in the industry that need to see this. So there are a ton of questions, I think great questions that we just don't have time for. However, just as a heads up, we are going to have at the end of the year kind of a Q&A webinar where we're going to bring in some air filtration professionals. So some of these might be great fodder for kind of a rapid fire Q&A sort of thing. So we will get to those either again in a follow-up article keep an eye on our website and join our mailing list to see more answers and more great content like this. Thanks so much. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Again, Tony Verhoeven with National Air Filtration Association. NAFAHQ.org is our website. Go check there for more information. And thanks for being with us. Take care. Bye-bye.